Okay, we have Chaim and we've got Cheryl, except that Chaim's still connecting to audio for quite a while. I hope he doesn't have a bandwidth problem. And Cheryl in the USA, my goodness, it's 2 a.m. Wow, almost 2 a.m. Oh, it's really nice how he's panning around so that we can really see everything. For those who are discerning, we can also see the enormous diversity of the people there. You will see ultra Orthodox with the black clothing and hats, and you have others who are wearing more colorful kippas on their heads and white and other kinds of festive clothing. And they're all together. Isn't that what Sukkot is about, Jonathan, right?
Exactly.
It's like we want everyone together.
I think it's not only what Sukkot is about, I think it's also what the Kotel is about. Bringing everybody together.
So true, so true. It's really an amazing experience when you go to the Kotel, even on a regular day when there are not thousands of people there, but you see such diversity. People come to the Kotel. It's not a grand building or it's a wall. It's not even the wall of the temple. It's actually the wall of the mount. It keeps the mount there. But the story is actually told that when this wall was built, it was built by so many people who came together in order to build this wall that just that joint effort of putting up a wall that would maintain, support the mount. It kind of reminds us also of the tabernacle where they had at the bottom, at its foundations, there were these bronze foundations that were like, how do you say? They were kind of cubic. There were cubes and the poles went into the cubes. And that too was donated by all of the people of Israel. Everybody gave half a shekel. And together they built the foundations of the temple. So here as well, we see that the foundations of the temple in Jerusalem as well were created by everyone together. And it's everyone together there at the Kotel right now. As you said, Jonathan, all year round. So maybe just for a moment, I'll, for the benefit of, not now at 9 o'clock when we begin, we will give an introduction to the priestly blessing. And right now, they're in earlier parts of the prayer. The prayer on the holiday is actually quite long. It can be more than an hour. There's a lot of different special things that we do on Sukkot during this prayer because of the lulav. So we'll give a little introduction about the lulav that you see everybody is holding here. And we'll talk about the priestly blessing. Now, this is a Sefer Torah, but for those who are not familiar, it's a Sephardic one because in the Sephardic tradition, the Torah itself is contained in a beautiful casing like this, which is also very beautifully adorned. In the Ashkenazic tradition, it doesn't stand, but rather it lies down. It's something that requires support, but it's lighter. It's easier to carry. The Ashkenazic one, the Sephardic, you really need somebody strong to carry it. And but it's so beautiful standing there in the middle of the table where they will ultimately read from it later on in the prayer. So there's a Torah reading, and there's also something called Hoshanot, where everybody goes with their lulav, with their 4 species, and they go around the Sefer Torah, kind of like we did when we went around Jericho, walking around it 7 times in order to break down the barriers. So here too, when we were walking around the Sefer Torah to break down barriers so that we can all become one. As you can see here, when God collected us from all corners of the earth, that includes also Africa, everywhere. Jews are very diverse. We were spread in exile throughout the world, and we have people from every continent. And I think one of the great achievements of Israel is learning how to create a state that is founded upon Jews returning from all corners of the globe, from all continents, all colors, and not just Jews. We have amazing challenges with minorities in Israel that include Christians and Muslims and Druze and Cherkessis, and it's an amazing challenge. And many aspects of this challenge have been dealt with very successfully, and others are still ahead of us. But that's part of our story, addressing the many challenges that God has given us, and with his help, doing so successfully. Okay, it's 9 o'clock. So I'm going to unpin for a moment. Okay, so that I can actually show you. Actually, let's pin myself for a moment.
Yeah, I did it.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that you can all really see this. Do you see, is my lulav clear enough? Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. So right now, I see you primarily, Yonatan. Can you pin me back on the? Oh, here it is. Okay, great. So let's see who we have on the call. I see someone from the Groundsel family. We have Kaylee.
Hi.
Hi, Kaylee. Good morning.
Good
Really
morning.
for you guys.
Yes.
Good morning.
Shalom, Yair.
Hi, Chris. Great to have you on at 2 a.m.
Yes.
We're happy to be caught it.
Okay, we have Cheryl here. USA, wonder where she's from. Welcoming you. We also have another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Interesting. So as you can see on one hand, let's pin Eliasaph at the Kotel again. So we can see the Kotel. This is what's going on in the Kotel right now. You can already see many people holding their lulavs. You also see the Sefer Torah, the Torah scrolls. This is actually a Sephardic Torah scroll, as we mentioned earlier, for those who were early on. As you can see in the Sephardic tradition, the Torah scrolls actually stand upright. And perhaps at a later stage, we'll see what's written in them from the other side. I know that we have filmed that earlier, so we'll certainly have that in our recordings. But as you can see, people are holding a lulav, and maybe you can also see that he's holding not just a lulav, but also an etrog. So let me just show you what that is so that you'll understand what it is that you're seeing. So I'm currently going to, here I am in my sukkah, and you can see the three species that I have here right now. You see the willow, which is like a willow bended over, and we have the hadassim, the myrtles, which also have an amazing smell. When we part from the Shabbat, we often do so with the myrtle. And we have the lulav itself, which is from the palm tree. It has to be complete. So perhaps, Yonatan, we can silence. Okay, great. So we have here, it has to be closed to be appropriate for to be a lulav. So we have these three species. And here's our fourth one. The fourth one is our etrog. The etrog, as you can see, is very special. It's not like a lemon, or it's very often, it also has a greenish kind of color, and many of them have many other kinds of, they're very, very beautiful. And these are the four species together. We can talk more about what exactly they symbolize, but each of them do symbolize different places in Israel, different people in Israel. And part of, I think, the beauty of this commandment that we have in Leviticus, that we are supposed to take all of these four species, is collect them. We're supposed to kach lecha, we should put it in our hands. So we have to hold them together, recognizing that all of the people in it and all of the different parts of Israel are important and must be bound together. So you'll actually, and that's what we do. We actually walk around with our lulav, as we call, that's the general name for all four species held together. We walk around wherever we go. We go to visit someone, we take our lulav with us. And what you see here, going back to the kotel, to what we can see over here, you'll see that we have, right, you'll see that everybody there has a lulav, even as children, even the kids. You see, they all have their lulavs. And in various parts of the prayer, they also will wave the lulav. They will shake the lulav. That's a very interesting custom that started at the times of the prophets. It's associated with the prophets to shake them in the different directions. You see, they shake them to all four sides, as well as upwards and downwards. And the meaning that I like to associate with that is that we want to take this togetherness, this gathering, everybody together. We want to take this and promote it in all the directions. And the four directions means to take this togetherness and spread it to all four corners of the earth. And then we also have upwards, which means we want to be together with God, and downwards, perhaps to be together with our ancestors. We want to see ourselves as a chain that continues. I can say that every single Jew in Israel today is part of a chain that has at least 100 links. If we go back to the time of the exile 2,000 years ago, there were at least 100, maybe even 150, 200 generations. And most of those who in each generation often assimilated, which is why the number of Jews today is not much greater than the number of Jews 2,000 years ago. So there's been tremendous assimilation, which basically means that those that remain Jewish today, those that ultimately were brought back from God, by God to Israel, each and every single one of them is a descendant of at least 100 generations that did not assimilate, that held fast to their Judaism, very often under extreme conditions where many even had to give up their lives to be Jewish. And here we are today. So those that are today are essentially those whose ancestors held fast to their Judaism for 2,000 years and 100 generations. And we're all part of that chain. And it's very, very strong part of our identity to identify with all of those who preceded us and to see ourselves as having a calling to fulfill the calling of the Jewish people, which actually is to be a priestly nation, as we know from Exodus before at the Mount of Sinai. So here we are. Typically, thousands of Israelis come now during the holiday in order to pray together. Typically, they're much smaller groups that pray in the synagogue, sometimes 10, sometimes hundreds, but here thousands actually gather together, and they also experience the priestly blessing together, where typically hundreds of priests line the wall and they bless all of us together. And that is something that we're about to experience. With that, maybe it would be a good idea to show the priestly blessing to kind of get a sense of what it is that the priestly blessing really is about. So I'm going to share this. So here we have essentially the priestly blessing. I presume you can all see it. What you see here to the right is the earliest inscription of Hebrew text that has been found. It's from 600 BC. So we're really talking about during the period of the first temple. And they actually found it in Hebrew, in ancient Hebrew, inscribed here. Of course, it has several pieces have been damaged, so we don't see it, but those who are familiar with the content of the priestly blessing can definitely see that this is the priestly blessing. It's actually the earliest inscription of Hebrew text that has been found to date. And these are the verses that talk about the priestly blessing in it's actually, sorry, it's not in Deuteronomy, it's Numbers. We'll have to fix that. What you see here is God essentially telling us what that priestly blessing should be. And this is the way he says, speak to Aaron and his sons, thus shall you bless the people of Israel. Say to them, the Lord bless you and protect you. The Lord make his face or image to shine upon thee and be gracious, educating to thee. The word vichuneka, which is the Hebrew word, is typically we say chinuch or lachanoch, means to educate. It means to mentor. It means to bring somebody up in a certain way. So here, the first blessing, the first stage perhaps of any blessing for even a baby who has not yet grown is that God should keep us. The second blessing is that God should make his image shine upon us so that we can grow up properly, so that we can learn to walk in the ways of God. And then the third blessing is the Lord bestoweth his favor upon you and grant you peace. In Hebrew, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. And these are a bit cryptic in the sense that it's not exactly clear what we mean when we say a face of God. After all, God doesn't have a face. God doesn't have any image, yet God has instilled an image of himself into man, as we know from Genesis. So the image of God is actually only visible to us in our fellow man. Something to think about. So when it says, for example, that Lord make his image shine upon thee, is that God himself, or is it through those who carry his name, those who represent God and who behave like God would want us to behave, or perhaps like God himself behaves, that actually emulate the ways of God? And then finally, the Lord bestow his favor calling upon you. After we've been educated to walk in his ways, we also have a calling to fulfill that will ultimately bring us peace, which I think is very much the essence of the period that we're in. Israel has been gathered, as God promised, from all corners of the earth, but we are only now beginning to think about what our calling is for the rest of the world. And if we really want peace in the Middle East, if we really want peace in our lives throughout the world, it has to begin with Israel realizing its calling for the rest of the world, which is, I think, what Sukkot is about, because it really enables us to start learning our calling vis-a-vis the rest of all of the nations. When the nations come to Jerusalem to celebrate Sukkot with us, then we can begin to figure out what our calling is. And that is what will bring peace here and peace everywhere. So the Cohanim here are essentially saying this blessing, as you will see. But they are actually saying it in a very interesting way, because they actually say it with their hands like this, like Dr. Spock. They hold their hands in a certain way, and they also cover themselves with a talit, that garment that almost all Jews wear when they pray. So they actually cannot be seen, and even their hands cannot be seen because they are covered by the garment. The question, of course, arises, why? Why do they cover themselves up? Why are we not allowed even to see their hands when they are saying this blessing? And perhaps one answer is in the verse that follows. It says, they shall link, or I like the interpretation of Besamu et Shmi, they shall place my name upon the people of Israel and I will bless them. It isn't the priest who blesses us. It's God who blesses us. And God tells us that when the priests place God's name, and we see God's name here in every single verse, the Lord in Hebrew, we see the Tetragrammaton, Vayivarech Adonai, Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Yer Adonai panav elecha v'yichunak, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. We are essentially being blessed that God's name should be upon us. God's name being upon us is very, very demanding, because it means that if we represent God, we have to behave like somebody who is worthy of representing God. So if we can really not only have God's name upon us, but if we actually learn how to emulate his ways and walk in the ways of God, then God will bless us. God will bless us, not the priest. So the job of the priest is essentially to help us understand what God wants us to do, to help us become more and more like God, to help us become more driven by his calling. When we succeed in doing that, then God will protect us. He will shine his light upon us so that we will learn to walk in his way appropriately. And he will also help us find our purpose and our calling so that we can ultimately bring peace to the world. So I think now we have a little bit of an understanding of what the priestly blessing is about. And now we can return to Eliasaph, who's there at the Kotel, and see what's going on. We are now a minute or two before the priestly blessing. The priestly blessing is about to begin. They are now reciting the prayer itself, led by the, as they refer to, the messenger of the people, of the congregation. And you see that the priests are beginning to cover themselves. They're aligning the wall and they're covering themselves with talit. Within seconds, we will start hearing them reciting the priest's blessing, and when they complete the recital, we will say a little bit more and be open to discussion about what we've just heard.
Kohanim. Adam Vishmecho
The congregation says Amen.
Adam Hoshanot Elechon V'chinecho
Amen.
Iso Adam Cohanim Elechon Veyosef Lechon Shalom.
כי לא אפונך וסתו לא נידו אלו יאיתו ירסקי ויעד החסד. יצדוקו יבוכו ורחם שלו אלתוי. לא יביאו נרמות הידו סקרם כסף פרשו. לא יחסו אדויתו. המפואך סמו ישראל.
קהל נכבד, מועדי שמחה, ברוכים הבאים. כל מי שהגיע לברכת כהנים של שחרית והתפלל כבר, מתבקש לפנות את המקום לטובת אלה שרוצים להגיע לברכת כהנים של מוסף כדי למנוע צפיפות.
That's very interesting. Okay, how do we unpin this so we can perhaps just be us together for a few minutes?
Yair, you are pinned.
Okay.
And Eliasaf is muted, so you can talk.
Okay, great. I just don't see that. Okay. I actually see you, Jonathan. Okay, I don't see anybody else. But does anybody have any questions about what we just saw?
No, not really. That was amazing. I'm so glad I stayed up for that.
I think it's really remarkable that you all stayed up for this. I think that one of the things that we couldn't really feel, I just want to check, I'm right now in the sun, is that the sound, we couldn't get the audio. I think the audio was a bit saturated because when you have a few hundred people saying the blessing together, then I assumed that the volume was a little saturated the mic, so we didn't hear them clearly enough. But in the 360 recording that we did while they were doing this, I'm sure that you'll also be able to hear the sound. It's just an amazing sound. It's like when everybody is blessing everyone together. Another thing is that you will see in the 360 how those who are there at the Kotel are also covering, not looking at the priests. According to the Talmud, when the priests were very worthy of giving this blessing, then when they said this blessing, a light, a very powerful light would come down from the heavens and actually go out to the people that the hands were like stretching out to. So when they stretched their hands in this way, the light would come to the people and the people would lower their eyes so as not to get blinded by the light. So we are looking forward to that kind of an experience when we go to the temple. We will be able to sense God's presence in a very, very clear way, together with the priests, in such a way that we will all essentially be bowing down, just like the prophets say, that all the nations will bow down to God in Jerusalem. Imagine that this bowing down is actually taking place while they are all being blessed by the priests, with the blessing that God himself has essentially given us to bless the world with. So we look forward to that day when we will really be able to experience this, and when all the nations will come to experience it together with us. And perhaps we can, by doing what we're doing now, contribute to the readiness of the world for that temple and to the beginning of its construction, so that peace can indeed be spread throughout the world. So have a good night, those that have joined us from the US. And we look forward to seeing you join us in programming later on today.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Chag Sameach. Everybody should have a happy Chag.
Hi, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Live from Jerusalem. Talk to you
Thank
later.
you. We'll see you then.
Very
soon.
good. Bye-bye.
Great job.